Hey everyone, Rick Ellis here. I'm here with Robin today, who's kind enough to assist me. So I wanted to talk about today one of the things that Jiu Jitsu instructors the world over are constantly hammering and preaching to their students, and that is the idea of keeping your elbows in, keeping your arms tight so that you can't get arm barred. A lot of times when we play Jiu Jitsu, we tend to have our arms dangling out, and that's when we get into trouble. And so I want to talk about this concept and maybe show a few examples from a variety of positions of what it means to keep your elbows in and your arms tight. So let's do it. Let's talk about side control. So, in side control, you have a far arm, you have a near arm. The far arm, I can always try to intercept. There's an Americana. If she swims to this side, I can gather that arm, get to the other side, and hit an arm bar. If I manage to get this arm out of position, maybe I can swivel in and step over, and there's an arm bar there as well. So, we have to learn how to keep our arms into position. All right, so in side control, keeping your elbows in and your arms tight means my elbows are actually in. If my elbows are even a little bit out, she's gonna be able to get a bite and maybe start attacking for something. The same thing holds true with this elbow. If it's out and out of position, she can attack. So the safest position for me to be in is with my elbows in tight. There's not a whole lot that she can do to me from this position. Now, it might mean that I can't really escape either because I need my arms, I need my frames, I need to move to be able to escape. But from a purely defensive standpoint, if all I do is keep my elbows in, there is not a whole lot that she can do. Now, if I do frame out so that I can maybe bridge and try to escape that way, if I feel her threaten this arm, I need to be ready to tuck that elbow anytime I feel this arm being attacked. Same thing with the rear arm. If I get it into position and I feel her switch and start to switch to Kesa, I need to retract that elbow and get back into my safe position. Let's talk about guard. Here too, we need to keep our elbows in, but we need to keep our elbows in within the context of being framed up and postured up so that our posture isn't broken and we're not fighting back and forth. I did another video on guard positioning, closed guard positioning, and you should watch that because I go into a lot of this stuff there, so I'm not gonna go in deeply on that stuff today, but I just wanna mention that elbows in means elbows in. Now, hands on the hips, I can create my structure, I can get my base and my posture, and now I'm safe. And if she tries to pull me down, there's not a whole lot she can do if my structures are good and my elbows are in position. If my elbows are out, she can grab a hold of them, pull forward, and get me tipped over and begin attacking. So always keep your elbows in. But what about protecting your neck, you might ask, because if your elbows are in, what do you do about your neck? And this is one of those things that you have to learn to defend without your arms up here. We're gonna talk about that within the context of guard. We'll probably talk about that within the context of mount, because anytime your arms are up, protecting your neck, it means they're vulnerable to being attacked. It's double jeopardy. Someone attacks your neck, they take the arms. So we have to learn to protect our neck without using our arms. Now, how do we do that? Well, one strategy is to keep your head, your neck away from your opponent's head and neck, because even if I let her get her hands into position, if I'm up near her, she has leverage and she can choke me easily. On the other hand, if I can, let's say maybe push her head away and retract, there's no leverage. It's very, very hard to get choked here when their arms are outstretched. So if I've got my positioning here, my elbows are in, my elbows are tight, and she tries to get a hold of my collar, as long as I'm far away here, there's really not a whole lot of threat of choke. Sometimes people will get that first hand in, actually do the other side. Sometimes people will get the first hand in. I will take this other side, I'll tuck it, I'll tuck my chin, and then I'll retract. And now not only is there no choke, but it's hard for her to get that second hand in to get any kind of control under the collar there. So play around with that a little bit. Teach yourself to defend your neck by tucking your chin, maybe tucking the lapel in, but mostly by keeping your head away from your training partner's head. Don't be up hovering and so on. If they do get a hand in one collar, maybe I defend the other arm. And then I get my positioning, I get my elbows in, I tuck my neck, and now there's really not a whole lot that she can do to choke me. Let's talk about mount, because mount is a difficult position, really, and it is the classic position where there's double jeopardy. If Robin starts attacking my neck, my arms come up to defend, and now she can slide her knee up and begin taking that arm, and now I'm in trouble. So how do we prevent the choke? How do we keep our elbows in? This is a dilemma. Well, it's maybe not as much of a dilemma as you might think. We talked a minute ago about her having leverage to choke me when we were in guard, and that leverage comes when her head is near my head. So if she gets a hand in to choke me, if her head is above mine or even slightly past it, it means she has a ton of leverage to choke me. On the other hand, if I'm able to maybe get a frame and move myself away, this seems like I'm in danger, but her head is not directly above mine, and her arms are outstretched, which means she doesn't have a ton of leverage. Some people are really strong, some people have really long arms. There are always exceptions to this, but generally when I get into a mount situation, my goal is to take one arm, find the hip bone, I have a connection here on that bone with the cross arm. With the near side arm, I reinforce, I keep my elbows in, and my goal is really to create as much distance as possible. I actually even will angle myself away at a bit of an angle here, and not really worry about my neck so much. And in fact, I like it when people attack my neck from this position because it means she has to shift her center of gravity to choke me. So if you do that, you'll notice that her hips got light and I was able to scoop underneath and escape. This is probably my number one most successful escape, which is just to chill out, camp out, get my frames, create some distance, and then just wait for them to attack your neck. As she comes up, see how her hips got light and I was able to begin scooping, and now I can start working myself into guard. The other thing that happens from mount is if I'm framed up, some people will try to peel those arms up so they can scoot themselves to high mount. They'll just peel up, yeah. So we have to just constantly be willing to get those arms back into position. Sometimes this becomes a little bit of a battle. She will scoop up and then we have to immediately come back. My goal is to keep my elbows in, my arms down, my connection with the hip, and then if she wants to attack my neck, again, it's not that bad because it gives me a means of hipping out and getting out to closed guard or to a different position. Let's talk about S-mount. Sometimes when you get to your side to escape, they're going to shift and end up in S-mount. In S-mount, this top arm is really vulnerable to arm locks. She can also scoop underneath to get a bow and arrow choke under the neck. So we have a bit of a double jeopardy here as well, in addition to the way we did in mount. But here too, if I immediately hide my arm, I like to go under the leg, it means there's no longer an arm bar here. This bottom arm isn't really too vulnerable from this position. I just keep the elbow tucked in. I don't want to tuck both arms in because I want to be able to block this shin, and so I just tend to camp out here. And now, just as with mount, if she decides to grab my neck to choke me, I can always just bridge and scoop out. Let's talk about Kesa Gatame, common position. Robin is a judo practitioner and her Kesa is pretty darn good like most judoka. But the key to Kesa is her controlling this arm. If she can gather it, gather the tricep and pull this arm out of position, then she has all the advantage and I have none of the advantage. On the other hand, if I'm able to retract that elbow, there's not a whole lot she can do. It becomes a little bit of a battle. She's gonna be trying to pull this arm out. I'm gonna be trying to hide this arm, and that's what allows me to start sneaking out the back. Now, there's a timing element here. Go to side control. Typically, when someone transitions to Kesa, they usually do it from side control. And there's that moment, as she goes, I hid my arm. I used to hide my arm, here, turn this way. I used to just drop my elbow. So go to Kesa, here it comes, I drop it. And that worked pretty well, but against people that are really strong, maybe sometimes this becomes the battle, right? So go back to side control. These days, I've trained myself to hide my arms completely, so as she transitions, I tuck to the other side. And now I have two arms on the back side, which allows me to bridge and get myself out. So in another one of my videos, I talked about this concept from the back. And the concept is this: if I let her get her underhook and overhook, the seatbelt or the harness, then I have a lot of problems that I have to deal with. On the other hand, if she doesn't have the seatbelt yet, and I keep my elbows in, I'm digging them in under my rib cage. That's what it means to keep elbows in, under the rib cage. I'm here. It's not so bad because she can't control me from moving. Try to get your seatbelt in. There's not a whole lot here, which means I can start scooting down, getting low. I can kick out to clear a leg, and move some space, and we can come up and get out pretty easily. So anytime someone is threatening to take my back, a lot of people will fight the hooks and give up the seatbelt. I reverse that. I don't care as much about the hooks. I am all about this right here, keeping my chin tucked. Maybe we're hand fighting a little bit. I'm trying to prevent her from getting my collar, but fundamentally, my elbows are in, my arms are tight, and then life's not so bad. Let's talk about turtle. So I know I said to keep your elbows inside. Turtle is the one exception where you keep your elbows a tiny, tiny bit to the outside, but not much because you don't want them to get a bite. So elbows in at the hip, but I want to dig them into my hip bones to create a little point of connection there. If they're too far on the inside, it means that Robin's probably going to be able to wedge a knee in there or wedge a foot in. Go ahead and slide in. And then, they're on their way to taking the back. So if you keep your elbows just a hair to the outside, in nice and tight, I'm going to put my head on the mat, tuck my chin. I like to be on the balls of my foot when I do this because it gives me a little bit more mobility. And now it's not so bad. There's really not a whole lot that people can do to get an arm exposure or to get it choked. Sometimes they tip you, sometimes, there are other problems that you have to deal with from turtle, but you're not dealing with the problem of them taking your back, and you're not dealing with the problem of them choking you or getting that arm exposure. Chin tucked, elbows almost in, not quite, digging into the hips, head on the mat, balls of your feet up, and then life's not so bad. Let's talk about half guard. So this top arm is the one that's always vulnerable when you're in half guard. I can use my elbow to pin, and then we can start attacking it, and so on. So here too, we need to hide that arm. And let's talk about that. So when you're in half guard, you have to keep that elbow down and in. A lot of times my goal is to scoop in for my own underhook with this arm, but I'm gonna be on my side. I'm gonna keep this nice and tight. If she starts pummeling for her own underhook, you have to then re-pummel and get out. So this arm becomes the battle. Keep it in nice and tight. Be willing to re-pummel if you need to. The other arm is the one that I'm preventing the crossface with, and I don't want to go into deeply how to deal with half guard, but just know that that top arm needs to always be ready to glue itself to your rib cage so that it's not vulnerable. Okay, so those are some ideas on how to play defensive jiu-jitsu with the framework of keeping your elbows in, your arms into position. Whether your arms are down, whether your arms are up, doesn't matter. What matters is keeping those elbows tight and your arms in, and then you're not going to be nearly as susceptible to getting tapped out, and life is a lot better. Good? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Robin.
Yep.
See you next time.